Growing up in suburban Chicago, I learned early that good things came to those who worked for them. My parents, Margaret and Thomas Bennett, weren't wealthy, but they instilled values that served me well. Dad managed a small accounting firm, Mom taught elementary school, and both emphasized education above everything else. Sophie and I shared a bedroom until I left for college, but we couldn't have been more different in our approaches to life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. While I spent high school studying for AP exams and working weekends at the local hardware store to save for college, Sophie focused on cultivating what she called her personal brand. Even at 15, she was obsessed with followers, likes, and appearing more sophisticated than our solidly middle-class reality. She'd spend hours staging photos of borrowed designer clothes, creating the illusion of a lifestyle we definitely couldn't afford. I earned my architecture degree through Northwestern through a combination of academic scholarships, student loans, and 3 part-time jobs. After graduation, I started at Green & Associates as a junior draftsperson, working my way up through sheer determination and 60-hour weeks. By 30, I'd become the youngest partner in the firm's history, specializing in sustainable urban design projects that actually made a difference in communities. Sophie, meanwhile, had parlayed her high school social media obsession into what she generously called a career as a lifestyle influencer. After dropping out of DePaul during her sophomore year, she moved to LA with dreams of becoming the next big thing. Her Instagram featured carefully curated shots of luxury brunches, designer handbags, and exotic vacation destinations, all funded by a rotating cast of wealthy boyfriends who seemed to view her as an attractive accessory rather than a serious partner. The contrast between our paths became stark during family gatherings. Sophie would arrive with stories of yacht parties in Malibu and shopping sprees on Rodeo Drive, while I talked about LEED certifications and affordable housing projects. Our parents tried to show equal interest in both our lives, but I could see the subtle worry in their eyes when Sophie casually mentioned dropping $3,000 on a purse or flying to Miami for a weekend just because. I met Ethan at a sustainable building conference in Denver 3 years ago. He was presenting on innovative structural engineering for green construction, and his passionate defense of environmentally responsible design caught my attention immediately. After his presentation, I approached him with questions about load-bearing calculations for one of my current projects. What started as a professional conversation over coffee turned into dinner, then a long walk through downtown Denver, then staying up until 3 in the morning discussing everything from Frank Lloyd Wright to the future of urban planning. Ethan Walsh was everything I'd never known I needed in a partner. He was brilliant without being arrogant, successful without being flashy, and secure in himself to celebrate my achievements rather than compete with them. As a structural engineer running his own consulting firm, he understood the demands of my career and shared my passion for projects that served communities rather than just profit margins. Our relationship developed naturally over 2 years of weekend visits between Chicago and Minneapolis, where his firm was based. We'd spend Saturdays touring architectural landmarks, Sunday hiking trails outside the city, and evenings cooking dinner together while debating the merits of different building materials. He never tried to impress me with expensive restaurants or extravagant gestures. Instead, he showed up consistently, listened carefully, and challenged me intellectually in ways that made me excited about sharing my future with him. Last Christmas Eve, Ethan proposed in my loft's living room, surrounded by the architectural models and design books that represented our shared world. He'd spent weeks researching vintage rings, finally settling on his grandmother's 1940s pink diamond solitaire, a delicate rose gold setting that held a rare natural pink stone about 3/4 of a carat. He said, "This belonged to my grandmother, Elena. She wore it through the Depression, World War II, raising 4 children, and 63 years of marriage to my grandfather. It's not the biggest diamond, but it survived everything life threw at her family." The ring was stunning in its simplicity. The pink diamond caught light in subtle ways that made it seem to glow from within, and the vintage setting had character that no modern ring could replicate. More importantly, it represented 4 generations of strong women in Ethan's family, women who'd built lives defined by resilience and genuine connection rather than status symbols. I said yes before he finished his speech, and we spent the rest of the evening calling our families and making plans. My parents were thrilled, having fallen in love with Ethan's thoughtful nature and obvious devotion during his visits to Chicago. Even Sophie, reached by phone in Aspen, where she was spending the holidays with her latest boyfriend, seemed genuinely happy for me. She said, "I can't wait to see this mystery ring. Ethan has such good taste in everything else." For 3 blissful months, I basked in engagement bliss. We set a wedding date for the following October, started researching venues, and began the process of merging our lives practically. Ethan put his Minneapolis condo on the market and started looking for office space in Chicago. I began introducing him to my extended family and friend circles, proud to show off the man who'd chosen to build a life with me. The pink diamond became my constant companion, a daily reminder of the partnership we were building. Colleagues at the firm complimented its unique beauty, friends admired its vintage character, and strangers often asked about its unusual color. Every compliment reinforced my conviction that Ethan had chosen perfectly, something meaningful and distinctive, rather than flashy and obvious. I should have known Sophie wouldn't let me stay content for long. The Bennett family's annual spring barbecue had been a tradition for as long as I can remember. Every May, Mom would transform our backyard into a celebration space, complete with string lights, folding tables, and enough food to feed a small army. Extended family would drive in from surrounding suburbs, longtime family friends would bring their kids, and Sophie would make her annual pilgrimage from LA to remind everyone how much more glamorous her life had become.
This year's gathering carried extra significance because it was my first family event as an engaged woman. I'd spent weeks looking forward to introducing Ethan to relatives he hadn't met, sharing our wedding plans, and basking in the congratulations that naturally came with announcing such happy news. Sophie arrived fashionably late on Saturday afternoon, making her entrance in a white Tesla Model S that she claimed was just borrowed from a friend. She'd clearly put significant effort into her appearance: professionally styled hair, designer sundress, and enough jewelry to stock a small boutique. Most notably, her left hand featured a massive emerald-cut diamond that caught sunlight like a spotlight, easily 3 carats, and surrounded by smaller diamonds that made the entire ring impossible to ignore. "Clara!" she squealed, rushing over to embrace me with the kind of theatrical affection she usually reserved for her Instagram stories. "I've been dying to see this famous pink diamond everyone's been talking about." I extended my hand proudly, watching her examine Ethan's grandmother's ring with what seemed like genuine interest. For a moment, I thought we might actually share a sisterly moment of celebration and mutual happiness. Then her expression shifted. "Oh, it's interesting. Very vintage." "Thank you," I replied, choosing to interpret her comment positively. "It belonged to Ethan's grandmother. The pink diamond is quite rare." Sophie tilted her head, studying the ring with an expression that made my stomach tighten. "How quaint. It's so delicate, almost fragile looking." Before I could respond, she thrust her own hand forward, positioning her massive diamond directly next to mine. The contrast was stark, and, I had to admit, somewhat diminishing. Her ring was undeniably impressive, modern, brilliant, and absolutely enormous compared to my vintage solitaire. "David proposed last month," she announced, loud enough for nearby relatives to turn and look. "He flew us to Paris and proposed at the top of the Eiffel Tower. The ring is from Tiffany's flagship store. 4 carats, flawless clarity, perfectly colorless. The sales associate said it was one of the most impressive stones they'd sold this year." I forced a smile, genuinely trying to be happy for her despite the obvious comparisons she was drawing. "Congratulations, Sophie. It's beautiful." But she wasn't finished. "You know," she continued, lowering her voice to what seemed like a confidential whisper, but was actually loud enough for half the party to overhear, "I was expecting something a little more substantial from Ethan. I mean, he's a successful engineer, right? This seems like something a college student would buy." The comment hit like a physical blow. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment as nearby conversations quieted and attention focused on our exchange. Aunt Linda, who'd been admiring my ring just minutes earlier, now looked between Sophie's massive diamond and my delicate vintage piece with obvious comparison. "The ring has sentimental value," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the humiliation building in my chest. "It's been in Ethan's family for generations." Sophie's laugh was light and dismissive. "Oh, I understand completely. It's sweet that he gave you something meaningful to him. I just thought he might have wanted to, add to it. Maybe have the stone reset in something more substantial, or add some side diamonds to give it more presence." She gestured toward my hand again, and I found myself unconsciously curling my fingers inward to hide the ring that had made me so happy just moments before. "Not everyone needs a spotlight on their hand." I attempted to defend my choice without directly insulting hers. "Of course not," Sophie agreed with false sweetness. "Some people are more comfortable with subtle. There's nothing wrong with modest." The word modest hung in the air like an accusation. I could see relatives processing the interaction, comparing our rings, and drawing their own conclusions about what our respective fiancés' choices said about us, or more accurately, about their feelings towards us. Ethan, who'd been helping Dad with the grill, approached our group just as Sophie was holding court about her Paris proposal story. He slipped his arm around my waist, clearly sensing tension without understanding its source. "How are my 2 favorite Bennett sisters doing?" he asked warmly, smiling at Sophie with genuine friendliness. "We were just admiring each other's rings," Sophie said, extending her hand toward Ethan. "Congratulations on your engagement, by the way. Clara has been showing off your grandmother's ring." I watched Ethan's face carefully as he processed Sophie's tone and the obvious comparison between our rings. His expression remained pleasant, but I caught a slight tightening around his eyes that suggested he understood exactly what was happening. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice carrying a warning that Sophie either didn't hear or chose to ignore. "Clara makes it look even more beautiful than my grandmother did." Sophie's smile became a razor sharp. "It's such a sweet story, very romantic. Though I have to ask, did you consider updating it at all? Adding some modern touches? I know several excellent jewelers in LA who specialize in vintage redesign." The suggestion that Ethan's choice wasn't adequate hung heavy between us. I could see him processing the insult, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "I think it's perfect exactly as it is," he said quietly, his voice carrying a warning that Sophie either didn't hear or chose to ignore. "Of course it is," she agreed with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Clara's always been more practical than flashy. She'd probably be uncomfortable with something too dramatic anyway." The conversation continued around us, but I barely heard it. Sophie's words echoed in my mind. Modest, subtle, practical, uncomfortable with drama. Each adjective felt like another nail in the coffin of my confidence, reducing my beautiful engagement ring to something apologetic and insufficient. As the afternoon progressed, I noticed relatives examining my ring with different eyes. Where they had previously offered genuine compliments, now they seemed to be looking for diplomatic ways to praise something that had been reframed as disappointing. Conversations about wedding plans took on a subtle undertone of concern, as if everyone was wondering whether Ethan's modest ring choice indicated broader issues with our relationship's future stability.
Sophie, meanwhile, basked in the attention her massive diamond generated. She held court by the dessert table, regaling cousins with stories of David's romantic proposal, the ring's impressive specifications, and their plans for an elaborate destination wedding in the Caribbean. I always told Clara she should hold out for someone who really wanted to impress her, she said during one conversation that I couldn't help overhearing. But I guess some people are just more easily satisfied. By the time Ethan and I left that evening, my beautiful pink diamond felt heavy on my finger, not with the weight of love and history, but with the burden of everyone's revised expectations. The ring that had made me feel special for 3 months now felt like a public declaration of my fiancé's lukewarm commitment. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Ethan slept peacefully beside me, wondering if everyone at the party was going home to discuss poor Clara and her disappointing engagement ring. The fallout from Sophie's performance at the family barbecue spread through our extended network faster than I could have imagined. What started as subtle comments and meaningful glances at the party evolved into a full-scale whisper campaign that reached corners of my life I'd never expected. The first sign came 3 days later during my weekly coffee date with Ava Ramirez, my best friend since college, and now a fashion journalist for Chicago Magazine. We'd been friends long enough that she could read my moods before I even spoke, so she knew something was wrong the moment I sat down across from her at our usual corner table. "Okay, spill," she said, studying my face with the same intensity she usually reserved for analyzing Fashion Week collections. "You look like someone told you sustainable architecture was going out of style." I filled her in on Sophie's ring commentary and the uncomfortable dynamics that had dominated the family gathering. Ava listened with increasingly dark expressions, occasionally muttering Spanish curses under her breath. "That manipulative little—" she started, then caught herself. "Sorry. I know she's your sister, but Clara, what she did was calculated and cruel. She deliberately undermined your happiness in front of your entire family." "Maybe I'm being oversensitive," I suggested, though I didn't believe it myself. Maybe she was just excited about her own engagement and didn't realize how her comments sounded. Ava gave me the look she usually reserved for particularly naive interview subjects. "Clara, you've known Sophie for 30 years. When has she ever done anything without calculating its effect on other people?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Jennifer. "Saw Sophie's ring photos on Instagram. Gorgeous. How are wedding plans going for you guys?" I showed Ava the message, and she rolled her eyes. "See? It's starting. Sophie's turned your engagement into a comparison game, and now everyone is wondering why your ring doesn't measure up to her standards." The texts continued throughout the week. Relatives who'd barely acknowledged my engagement before were suddenly checking in with concerned-sounding questions about wedding planning and whether Ethan and I needed any help with arrangements. The subtext was clear. They were wondering if financial limitations were affecting our ability to plan an appropriate celebration. Even more troubling were the conversations I started overhearing at work. Green and Associates occupied 2 floors of a converted warehouse in River North, and the open concept layout made private conversations nearly impossible. I'd always appreciated the collaborative atmosphere, but now I found myself listening to colleagues discussing my personal life with uncomfortable frequency. "Did you see Clara's engagement ring?" I heard Jennifer from the interior design team ask Marcus during their coffee break. "It's very unique."
Vintage can be nice, Marcus replied diplomatically. Some people prefer character over size. I suppose, though you'd think a successful engineer would want to make more of a statement. I retreated to my office, closing the door and pretending to focus on blueprints while my cheeks burned with humiliation. These were people I worked with every day, people whose respect I'd earned through years of professional excellence. Now they were questioning my fiance's commitment based on Sophie's poisonous commentary. The gossip reached Ethan's professional circle through channels I couldn't have predicted. His business partner, Mike Chen, had a wife who followed Sophie's Instagram account and had apparently been sharing screenshots of her ring photos with friends. When Mike casually mentioned during their weekly business meeting that he'd heard Ethan was engaged, he also felt compelled to add that some people were surprised by the ring choice. Ethan came home that evening visibly frustrated, something I'd rarely seen in our 2 years together. He was usually unflappable, approaching problems with the same methodical calm he brought to structural engineering challenges. But Sophie's campaign had clearly gotten under his skin. "I don't understand what is happening," he said, loosening his tie and pacing across my living room. "Mike asked me today if I was planning to upgrade your ring before the wedding. Upgrade it! As if my grandmother's diamond wasn't good enough." I wanted to comfort him, but I was dealing with my own crisis of confidence. "Maybe people are just curious about wedding plans," I suggested weakly. "Clara," he stopped pacing and looked me directly. "Your sister has convinced half of Chicago that I'm either cheap or uncommitted. I've had 3 clients this week ask about my business's financial stability because apparently there are rumors I can't afford a proper engagement ring." The reality of what Sophie had accomplished hit me fully for the first time. She hadn't just embarrassed me at a family gathering, she'd launched a coordinated assault on both our reputations that was affecting our professional relationships and social standing. "What do you want to do?" I asked, though I dreaded his answer. Part of me worried he might decide the drama wasn't worth it, that maybe he'd be better off with someone whose family didn't come with built-in saboteurs. Instead, he sat beside me on the couch and took my hands in his. "I want to marry you exactly as planned, with exactly this ring, and ignore every small-minded person who thinks love can be measured in carats." A committed man would have wanted to make a bigger statement. Maybe my willingness to accept a modest ring indicated something troubling about my expectations or self-worth. The doubts consumed me for days, making it difficult to concentrate at work or enjoy time with Ethan. I found myself hiding my left hand in meetings, avoiding conversations about wedding plans, and declining invitations to social events where I might encounter more pitying looks or diplomatic comments about my interesting ring choice. The breaking point came during a work meeting with Lionel Green, the firm's founder and my mentor since my early days at the company. We were discussing a potential project, a sustainable housing development that could be worth millions in fees, when he paused mid-sentence and studied my face with concern. "Clara, forgive me for asking, but are you all right? You seem distracted lately, and that's not like you." I forced a professional smile. "I'm fine, Mr. Green, just wedding planning stress." He nodded knowingly. "Ah, yes, the engagement. Congratulations again. Though I have to say, I was surprised when my wife mentioned the unique ring choice. Patricia follows your sister's social media, you know? She showed me the comparison photos." My heart sank. Even my mentor, the man who'd given me my biggest career opportunities, had seen Sophie's Instagram campaign and drawn his own conclusions about my relationship. "The ring has sentimental value," I said, repeating the explanation that was becoming my standard defense. "Of course," Mr. Green agreed quickly. "Sentimental value is important. Though I hope young Ethan understands the importance of, well, demonstrating his commitment appropriately, especially given your position here at the firm. Image matters in our business, as I'm sure you understand." I understood perfectly. My boss was diplomatically suggesting that my modest engagement ring was reflecting poorly on the firm's image, implying that clients might question whether I was truly successful if my own fiancé couldn't afford an impressive diamond. That evening, I did something I'd never done in our relationship. I picked a fight with Ethan about the ring. "Maybe Sophie has a point," I said over dinner, my voice sharper than I intended. "Maybe the ring does send the wrong message. Maybe people are wondering if you're really as successful as you claim to be." Ethan set down his fork and stared at me as if I'd suggested we cancel the wedding entirely. "Clara, are you serious right now? You're going to let your sister's jealousy make you doubt everything about our relationship? It's not just Sophie, it's everyone. My colleagues, your business partner, my boss, our families. Everyone thinks you cheaped out on the most important piece of jewelry I'll ever wear. The most important—" Ethan stopped himself, taking a deep breath before continuing more quietly. "Clara, 3 months ago, you told me this ring was the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen. You said it represented everything you loved about our relationship. What changed?" I wanted to explain that nothing fundamentally had changed, that I still loved the ring and everything it represented, but I couldn't ignore the social cost of Sophie's campaign, the way her comments had reframed my happiness as naivety, and Ethan's thoughtfulness as inadequacy. "Maybe I was wrong," I said, the words feeling foreign and bitter in my mouth. "Maybe I should have expected more." Ethan stood up from the table, his usual calm completely shattered. "If you want a bigger ring, Clara, I'll buy you a bigger ring. I'll buy you the biggest diamond in Chicago if that's what it takes to satisfy your sister and everyone else who's decided to have opinions about our private relationship." "That's not—" I started, but he was already walking toward the door. "I need some air," he said without turning around. "We'll talk when you decide whether you want to marry me or marry everyone else's expectations." The apartment felt impossibly quiet after he left. I sat at the dining table, staring at the pink diamond that caused so much trouble, wondering how Sophie had managed to turn my greatest happiness into my biggest source of shame. For the first time since Ethan's proposal, I seriously considered whether she might be right about everything. Ethan didn't come home that night, and I didn't sleep. I spent hours pacing my loft, replaying our fight, and wondering how Sophie had managed to poison something so beautiful in just 3 weeks. By morning, I felt hollow and ashamed of how easily I'd let other people's opinions override my own feelings. He finally returned around noon with coffee and croissants from our favorite bakery, his peace offering accompanied by the kind of tired smile that suggested he'd done his own share of sleepless thinking. "I'm sorry," I said, before he could speak. "I let Sophie get in my head, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair." Ethan set the pastries on my kitchen counter and pulled me into his arms. "I'm sorry, too. I should have understood how hard this has been for you. Your sister is—" He paused, searching for words that wouldn't be too harsh. "She's very effective at what she does." We spent the afternoon talking through everything. The gossip, the professional implications, and the way Sophie's campaign had made us both question things we'd been certain about just weeks earlier. Ethan suggested we could weather the storm by simply ignoring everyone else's opinions. But I was beginning to realize that wasn't going to be enough. "She's not going to stop," I told him as we sat on my couch, his grandmother's ring catching afternoon light through the windows. "She doesn't do anything halfway. If she's decided to make me look pathetic, she'll keep pushing until she gets the reaction she wants."
What kind of reaction? I considered this carefully. She wants me to either break up with you or demand a bigger ring. Either way, she wins. Either I'm alone and miserable, or I'm the shallow woman who made her poor fiancé buy her expensive jewelry to keep up with her sister. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "So what do we do?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. Mr. Green's name appeared on the screen, and I felt my stomach tighten. Weekend calls from my boss were never casual. "Clara, I am sorry to bother you, but I wanted to give you a heads up about Monday's client meeting. The Richardson Project has some new developments." The Richardson Project was our firm's biggest potential contract, a mixed-use development worth $15 million in architectural fees. I'd been leading the design team for 6 months, and we were supposed to present final concepts to the developers on Monday. "What kind of developments?" I asked, switching to speakerphone so Ethan could hear. "Well, it seems Patricia mentioned your engagement to Helen Richardson at their book club meeting. Helen was quite interested in hearing about your sister's social media presence. Apparently, she follows lifestyle influencers as a hobby. Anyway, the upshot is that Helen's concerned about whether our firm truly understands luxury residential design." My heart sank. Helen Richardson was the wife of the development company's CEO and had significant influence over design decisions. If Sophie's Instagram campaign had reached her— "I see," I managed. "I'm not saying this is insurmountable," Mr. Green continued, "but you might want to be prepared for questions about your personal aesthetic choices. The Richardsons are very image-conscious, and they're investing a lot of money in this project." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. Sophie's petty jealousy had now potentially cost me the biggest project of my career. The woman who'd spent our childhood claiming I was too focused on work was now sabotaging my professional life through her social media machinations. "That's it," I said, standing up with sudden determination. "I'm done being the victim in Sophie's little game." Ethan looked concerned. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking my sister wants a competition. Maybe it's time I gave her one." Monday's client meeting went better than I'd feared, but worse than I'd hoped. The Richardsons praised our sustainable design concepts and innovative use of space, but Helen Richardson did indeed question whether our firm truly understood aspirational living. She spent 20 minutes discussing the importance of luxury details and premium finishes, all while her eyes kept drifting to my left hand with obvious disappointment. "We want residents to feel they're making a statement by choosing this development. Everything about the project should communicate success and sophisticated taste. I'm sure you understand the importance of image in today's market." I understood perfectly. I also understood that my modest engagement ring was being interpreted as evidence that I couldn't design spaces for people with higher expectations than my own. The meeting ended with the Richardsons requesting another week to consider our proposal alongside 2 competing firms. Mr. Green's tight smile as they left told me everything I needed to know about our chances. But sometimes the universe has a sense of timing. That same afternoon, Mr. Green called me into his office with news that changed everything. The sustainable housing project I'd been developing for the past year had just received a massive federal grant, and the city had fast-tracked approval for the entire development. "The grant covers design fees beyond our original contract," he explained, sliding a check across his desk. "Your bonus for this quarter is going to be substantial, Clara. Very substantial." I stared at the number on the check. More money than I'd ever seen at once, enough to change my life in any number of ways. But I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. "Mr. Green, I need to ask a favor. Could you recommend a high-end jewelry store? I want to buy myself something special to celebrate this success." His face brightened immediately. "Of course. Patricia swears by Winston and Associates on Michigan Avenue. They handle all the finest pieces in the city. Tell them I sent you. They'll take excellent care of you." That evening, I told Ethan about the bonus and my plan. His initial reaction was confusion, then concern. "Clara, you don't need to prove anything to anyone, especially not to Sophie."
"This isn't about proving anything," I said, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. "This is about celebrating my success and showing everyone that I can afford whatever I want. I'm tired of being pitied." "But the ring—" "I'll still wear your grandmother's ring," I assured him, taking his hands. "Nothing will ever replace this or what it means to us. But I'm going to buy myself the most spectacular diamond ring Chicago has ever seen, and I'm going to wear it to every professional event and family gathering until Sophie chokes on her jealousy." Ethan studied my face carefully. "Are you sure this is what you want, not what Sophie's manipulated you into wanting?"
I considered his question seriously. Was this my idea or Sophie's influence? Did it matter? My sister had spent weeks convincing everyone that I was settling for less than I deserved. Maybe it was time to show them what I could achieve when I set my mind to it. "I'm sure," I said. "Sophie wants to play games about status and worth. Let's see how she handles losing." Winston and Associates occupied a corner space in one of Michigan Avenue's most prestigious buildings, with floor-to-ceiling windows displaying pieces that belonged more in museums than jewelry stores. I'd made an appointment under my own name, not mentioning Mr. Green's referral until I was standing in front of cases filled with diamonds that made Sophie's ring look modest. The sales associate, a polished woman named Victoria, greeted me with professional warmth that increased noticeably when I mentioned both Mr. Green and my substantial budget. She led me to a private viewing room where we could examine pieces without the distraction of other customers. "I'm looking for something significant, a statement piece that reflects professional success. Money isn't the primary concern. I want something unforgettable." Victoria's eyes lit up with the kind of enthusiasm that comes from working with clients who have both excellent taste and unlimited budgets. She disappeared into the store's vault and returned with a selection that took my breath away. The ring that caught my attention immediately was a 5-carat emerald-cut diamond, flawless and colorless, set in platinum with smaller diamonds cascading down the band. It was elegant without being gaudy, substantial without being vulgar, and when I slipped it onto my right hand, it caught light like captured starfire. This piece was designed by our master jeweler. The center stone is exceptional. D-color, internally flawless, with perfect proportions. It's one of the finest diamonds we've had in the store this year. I examined the ring from every angle, watching light dance through facets that had been cut with mathematical precision. It was stunning in a way that Sophie's ring, for all its size, couldn't match. This was a serious piece of jewelry, the kind worn by women who'd earned their own success rather than depending on men to provide it. "I'll take it," I said, without asking the price. Victoria named a figure that would have made me faint 6 months earlier, but today felt like a reasonable investment in my future reputation. I handed over my credit card without hesitation, already imagining the moment I'd revealed this ring to my sister. The fitting and final adjustments took another hour, during which Victoria shared stories of other successful women who'd purchased significant pieces to mark career milestones. Apparently, I was joining a tradition of Chicago's female executives who understood the power of making visual statements about their achievements. "Jewelry like this sends a message," Victoria observed as she made final sizing adjustments. "It says you're serious about your success and confident in your position. Some people might call it excessive, but I think it's simply accurate advertising." When I left Winston and Associates that afternoon, I had 2 rings on my hands. Ethan's grandmother's pink diamond on my left ring finger and my own 5-carat statement piece on my right. The contrast was striking, but somehow both rings felt like essential parts of who I was becoming. I'd kept the shopping trip secret from everyone, except Ethan, who'd insisted on seeing the ring before I made any public appearances. His reaction was exactly what I had hoped for. Stunned appreciation, followed by concern about my motivations. "It's gorgeous," he said, examining the diamond under my loft's track lighting. "But Clara, are you doing this for the right reasons?" "I'm doing this because I worked hard for 15 years to build a career that can support this kind of purchase. And because I'm tired of letting Sophie define my worth based on what other people give me." "And if she escalates? If she takes this as a challenge rather than a defeat?"
I considered this possibility. Sophie had never backed down from anything in her life, and my dramatic response might push her to even more extreme behavior. But I was beyond caring about Sophie's potential reactions. "Then she'll learn that I can escalate too," I said, admiring the way my new ring caught light. "I've been playing defense for too long. It's time Sophie remembered who she's dealing with."
The ring felt heavy on my finger, not physically, but with the weight of decisions I was making about the kind of person I wanted to be. For years, I'd prided myself on being above the petty competitions that seemed to drive Sophie's every action. But maybe there was something to be said for fighting back, for refusing to let other people's jealousy diminish my happiness. The charity gala was 3 weeks away. Sophie would be there, along with most of Chicago's social and professional elite. It would be the perfect venue to make my statement. I just hoped I was ready for whatever came next. The 3 weeks leading up to the mayor's annual charity gala felt like preparing for war. I'd attended the event twice before as Mr. Green's guest, but this year was different. This year, I had a table of my own, a benefit of my recent partnership status, and a 5-carat secret burning a hole in my jewelry box. Sophie, naturally, had been posting countdown content on her Instagram for weeks. She and David had apparently purchased an entire new wardrobe for the evening, including what she described as the perfect accessories to complement my engagement ring. Her posts featured close-up shots of her massive diamond alongside designer clutches, elegant earrings, and teasing glimpses of what she claimed was the dress of the century. "She's really going all out," Ava observed during one of our coffee dates, scrolling through Sophie's latest stories. "It's like she's treating this gala as her personal debutante ball." I sipped my latte and tried to look casual. She always does. Remember her high school graduation party? She spent more on decorations than most people spend on weddings. True, but this feels different, more desperate. Ava studied me carefully. "You're being awfully calm about all this. A month ago, you were spiraling because of her ring comments, and now you seem almost excited about seeing her." I wasn't ready to reveal my plan, not even to my best friend. The element of surprise was crucial, and I needed Sophie to walk into that gala feeling completely confident in her superiority. Any hint that I was planning something would give her time to prepare countermeasures. "I've just decided to not let her drama affect my life anymore," I said, which was technically true. "I'm going to focus on enjoying the evening and supporting the charity." Ava looked skeptical but didn't push. "Well, whatever's changed, I like seeing you confident again. That's the Clara I remember from college, the one who refused to let anyone make her feel small." The gala was being held at the Four Seasons, with proceeds benefiting the Chicago Children's Hospital. It was one of the city's most prestigious annual events, attended by politicians, business leaders, and the kind of old money families who'd been supporting worthy causes since before my grandparents were born. The guest list included everyone who mattered in Chicago society, making it the perfect venue for what I had planned. I'd spent considerable time selecting my outfit for the evening. The dress was a midnight blue silk creation from a local designer, elegant, sophisticated, and cut to showcase jewelry without competing with it. I'd chosen sapphire earrings that would complement both my rings, and my hair would be styled in a classic updo that would draw attention to my neckline and hands. Most importantly, I'd planned the reveal down to the smallest detail. I would arrive wearing only Ethan's grandmother's ring, just as I had to every public event for the past 4 months. Sophie would see me across the ballroom and feel that familiar surge of satisfied superiority, secure in her belief that she'd successfully diminished my status in everyone's eyes. Then, at the perfect moment, when the maximum number of people would be watching, I would excuse myself to the ladies' room and return wearing both rings. The 5-carat diamond would make its debut at the event's social peak when photos were being taken for the society pages and everyone was feeling their most glamorous. Ethan remained concerned about my plan, though he'd stopped trying to talk me out of it. "I just want to make sure you're doing this for yourself, not because Sophie manipulated you into thinking you need to prove something," he said the night before the gala. "I need to prove something to myself," which felt like the most honest explanation I could give. For 4 months, I've let other people make me feel ashamed of choices I was happy with. I need to take control of my own narrative. And if Sophie retaliates, if this becomes an ongoing competition? I considered this possibility seriously. Sophie had never backed down from anything in her life, and my dramatic response might push her to even more extreme behavior. But I was beyond caring about Sophie's potential reactions. "Then she'll learn that I can escalate too," I said, admiring the way my new ring caught light. "I've been playing defense for too long.
It's time Sophie remembered who she's dealing with.
The morning of the gala, I woke up feeling calm and determined. This was my moment to reclaim the confidence Sophie had spent months systematically destroying. Tonight, everyone who'd pitied me for my modest ring would see exactly what Clara Bennett could achieve when she set her mind to it. The Four Seasons Ballroom had been transformed into a winter wonderland, with crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across tables draped in silver and white. The charity auction items were displayed along the perimeter, vacation packages to exotic destinations, artwork from renowned artists, and jewelry pieces that caught light like captured stars. It was exactly the kind of elegant evening that brought out Chicago's most influential people, all dressed in their finest and most expensive accessories. I arrived fashionably on time with Ethan, who looked devastatingly handsome in his tailored tuxedo. We'd coordinated our timing carefully, late enough to make an entrance, early enough to see Sophie's reaction when she spotted me across the room. And there she was, holding court near the bar in a stunning red gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her massive diamond caught the chandelier light and threw rainbows across her décolletage, while David stood beside her looking like an accessory himself in his perfectly fitted tuxedo. She was surrounded by the usual crowd of socialites and hangers-on, all admiring her dress, her jewelry, and her carefully curated image of success. Sophie spotted me within minutes of my arrival, her eyes immediately dropping to my left hand where Ethan's grandmother's pink diamond sat in its familiar place. I watched her face cycle through expressions. Initial satisfaction, followed by what looked like mild disappointment that I hadn't upgraded to something more impressive. Then settling into that familiar look of superior pity. "Clara," she called out, waving me over with theatrical enthusiasm. "You look absolutely lovely. That dress is so sophisticated. Very you." The compliment was designed to sound sincere while actually emphasizing how predictable and conservative my choices were. Sophie had mastered the art of insults disguised as praise, and tonight was clearly no exception. "Thank you," I replied warmly, kissing her cheek in greeting. "You look stunning, as always. That dress is incredible." "David surprised me with it last week," she said, doing a small turn to show off the gown's dramatic silhouette. "He said he wanted me to have something worthy of this ring for such an important evening." She extended her hand toward the group, her massive diamond catching light and drawing appreciative murmurs from the assembled socialites. Several women leaned in to examine the stone more closely, offering the kind of breathless compliments that Sophie lived for. "It really is spectacular," agreed Janet Morrison, whose husband owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Chicago. "The clarity is absolutely flawless. You're so lucky to have someone who appreciates fine jewelry." Sophie's smile was radiant with satisfaction. "David says a ring should make a statement about the man who chooses it. He wanted everyone to know exactly how he feels about me." The implication hung in the air like expensive perfume, that Ethan's modest ring choice reflected his lukewarm feelings about our relationship. I felt familiar heat rise in my cheeks, but this time it was accompanied by anticipation rather than shame. "That's sweet," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. "Ethan feels the same way. He says jewelry should tell a story." "Of course," Sophie agreed, her tone suggesting that some stories were more impressive than others. "Vintage pieces have such character." The conversation continued around us, with Sophie holding court about her recent engagement activities, while I played the role of the quietly supportive older sister. To everyone watching, it was the same dynamic we'd established at the family barbecue. Sophie sparkling at the center of attention, while I faded into the background with my unremarkable ring and predictable choices. Dinner passed pleasantly enough, though I barely tasted the expertly prepared courses. My table included several of Chicago's most prominent business leaders, and I found myself fielding questions about architecture projects and sustainable design initiatives. The conversation was engaging, but I couldn't focus completely with my 5-carat secret waiting in my evening bag. Sophie's table was positioned perfectly for maximum visibility, and I could see her throughout the meal, gesturing animatedly while her diamond caught light with every movement. She was clearly in her element, basking in the admiration and envy of everyone around her. The charity auction began after dinner, with various local celebrities taking turns as auctioneers for different lots. Sophie bid aggressively on a diamond tennis bracelet, ultimately winning it for an amount that made several people gasp audibly. Her victory lap around the ballroom, showing off her new acquisition alongside her engagement ring, drew attention from across the room. "She's really laying it on thick tonight," Ethan murmured in my ear as we watched Sophie pose for photos with her latest purchase.
She's about to learn what laying it on thick actually looks like, I replied, checking my watch. The evening's social peak was approaching, the moment when the society photographers would be most active and the maximum number of people would be paying attention. It was time. "I need to freshen up," I announced to my table, standing gracefully and collecting my evening bag. "I'll be right back." The ladies' room at the Four Seasons was a marble sanctuary of mirrors and soft lighting, empty except for the attendant who offered me towels and perfume with practiced discretion. I moved to the vanity area and opened my evening bag with hands that were steadier than I'd expected. The 5-carat diamond ring sat in its velvet box like a captured star, the emerald-cut stone throwing prismatic light across the marble surfaces. I slipped it onto my right ring finger, where it settled with satisfying weight beside Ethan's grandmother's pink diamond on my left hand. The contrast was stunning. The vintage pink diamond told a story of love and family history, while the colorless 5-carat stone made a statement about personal achievement and financial success. Together, they represented everything I was, a woman who valued both sentiment and accomplishment, tradition and progress. I checked my appearance in the mirror one final time, adjusting my hair and smoothing my dress. The sapphire earrings complemented both rings perfectly, and the midnight blue silk provided an elegant backdrop for the diamond's brilliance. Taking a deep breath, I walked back into the ballroom just as the auction was winding down, and guests were beginning to mingle more freely. The timing was perfect. People were moving around, champagne was flowing, and the society photographers were circulating to capture candid moments of Chicago's elite enjoying themselves. I made my way slowly across the ballroom, stopping to chat with various acquaintances and business contacts. Each conversation provided an opportunity for my new ring to catch light and draw attention, and I watched as people's eyes widened when they noticed the spectacular diamond on my right hand. "Clara, that ring is absolutely breathtaking," gasped Linda Chen, the wife of one of Chicago's most successful tech entrepreneurs. "When did you get it?" "I bought it for myself last month, a celebration of some recent professional successes," I said with a smile that felt genuinely warm for the first time in weeks. "It's gorgeous," she breathed, leaning in to examine the stone more closely. "The clarity is incredible, and wearing it with your engagement ring, what a beautiful combination." The conversation was attracting attention from nearby groups, and I could see heads turning as word spread about my spectacular new jewelry. Within minutes, I was surrounded by people wanting to see the ring, offering compliments, and asking about the occasion that had prompted such a significant purchase. "I believe in celebrating achievements," I explained to the growing crowd. "This ring represents 15 years of hard work and the success that comes from never settling for less than you deserve." Across the ballroom, I could see Sophie's head turning as she noticed the commotion around me. Her expression shifted from mild curiosity to confusion to something approaching alarm as she realized that I, not she, had become the center of attention. She began making her way across the room, David trailing behind her, her face a mask of forced smile and growing concern. When she finally reached the edge of my admiring crowd, I saw her eyes go wide as she took in the 5-carat diamond blazing on my right hand. "Oh my goodness," she said, her voice pitched slightly higher than usual. "Clara, what a surprising accessory." The word surprising hung in the air with all its implications, that I had exceeded expectations, that I was capable of more than she'd given me credit for, that perhaps she had misjudged the situation entirely. "Thank you," I said warmly, extending my hand so she could see the ring more clearly. I decided it was time to treat myself to something special.
Sophie stared at the diamond for a long moment, and I could practically see her mind working as she tried to process this unexpected development. The ring was clearly superior to hers in every measurable way: larger, clearer, more expertly cut, and more elegantly set. More importantly, I had bought it myself, making it a symbol of personal achievement rather than someone else's affection. "It's very large," she managed finally, her usual confidence noticeably shaken. "5 carats," I confirmed pleasantly. "D-color, internally flawless. The jeweler said it was one of the finest stones they'd seen this year."
Janet Morrison, who had been admiring Sophie's ring just hours earlier, now seemed transfixed by mine. "The clarity is absolutely incredible, Clara, and the way you're wearing it with your engagement ring, it's such a sophisticated look. You're setting quite a trend." "I think every woman should have jewelry that reflects her own achievements," I said, my voice carrying across the interested crowd. "It's important to celebrate success, don't you think?" Sophie's smile was becoming increasingly strained as she realized that the tables had been completely turned. Where she had spent months positioning herself as the sister with the superior ring and more generous fiancé, I was now being praised for my independence, success, and sophisticated taste. "Of course," she agreed through gritted teeth, "though some people might think it's a bit much for one person to wear so many diamonds at once." It was a desperate attempt to reframe my triumph as excessive behavior, but the crowd around us wasn't buying it. If anything, her comment made her sound petty and jealous, exactly what she had made me feel for months. "I think Clara looks absolutely radiant," declared Patricia Green, Mr. Green's wife, who had just joined our group. "It's wonderful to see a successful woman celebrating her achievements so elegantly. That ring is a testament to hard work and excellent taste." The implicit comparison to Sophie's ring, a gift from a man rather than a symbol of personal success, couldn't have been clearer. Sophie's face was cycling through expressions as she tried to find a response that would salvage the situation, but there was nothing she could say that wouldn't make her sound even more jealous and small-minded. "Well," she said finally, her voice tight with barely controlled frustration, "I suppose everyone has their own way of handling success." "They certainly do," I agreed with a smile that felt like sunshine after months of storm clouds. "I found that the best way to handle it is to embrace it fully." As if summoned by some cosmic sense of perfect timing, one of the society photographers appeared at my elbow. "Excuse me, Miss Bennett, could I get a photo of you with that stunning ring? It's been the talk of the evening." I posed graciously, extending my hands to show both rings while the photographer captured multiple angles. Sophie stood frozen at the edge of the frame, her own massive diamond suddenly seeming less impressive by comparison. The photo session drew even more attention, and soon I was surrounded by Chicago's social elite, all wanting to hear the story behind my spectacular new jewelry. Sophie found herself pushed to the periphery of a conversation that had once centered around her, watching as I graciously accepted compliments and admiration that had been hers just hours earlier. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again, confident, successful, and completely in control of my own narrative. Sophie's campaign to diminish me had not only failed, it had spectacularly backfired. The evening was far from over, but the war was already won. The society pages of the Chicago Tribune the next morning featured a full-color photo of me at the gala, both rings sparkling under the headline, "Local Architect Celebrates Success in Style." The article praised my sophisticated approach to luxury and quoted several prominent attendees about my inspiring combination of professional achievement and elegant taste. Sophie's engagement announcement, which had dominated social coverage for months, was reduced to a small mention in the party roundup section. I was having coffee on my loft's balcony, savoring both the morning sunshine and the newspaper coverage, when my phone started ringing.
The first call was from my mother, who sounded equal parts proud and bewildered. Clara, honey, I just saw the photos from last night. That ring is absolutely stunning. When did you... how did you... Oh, dear, I'm not sure what to say. Say, congratulations, Mom. I worked hard for 15 years to be able to afford something like this, and I decided it was time to celebrate that achievement. There was a pause while she processed this. But Sophie said you'd be upset about the comparison between your rings. She's been so worried about your feelings. I nearly laughed out loud at Sophie's supposed concern for my feelings, given that she'd spent months systematically undermining my confidence. I think Sophie was projecting her own insecurities onto me. I've never been happier with my choices. Well, you certainly looked radiant in the photos. Your father and I are very proud of what you've accomplished, sweetheart. We just want both our daughters to be happy. The conversation with my mother was followed by calls from colleagues, clients, and friends, all congratulating me on the gala coverage and asking about my spectacular new ring. Mr. Green called personally to express his delight that I was finally presenting myself as the successful professional you've always been. The Richardson project is back on track, by the way. Helen Richardson saw the Tribune photos and called this morning to express her renewed confidence in our firm's understanding of luxury design. Apparently, your ring made quite an impression.
By noon, I'd received 3 new client inquiries from people who'd seen the newspaper coverage and wanted to work with the architect who clearly understood success and sophistication. My dramatic ring reveal hadn't just embarrassed Sophie, it had enhanced my professional reputation and opened new business opportunities. Ethan arrived for lunch with flowers and an expression of bemused admiration. I have to admit, your timing was perfect. Half of Minneapolis is talking about my fiancé's spectacular jewelry debut. Are you okay with all the attention? I asked, suddenly concerned that my public display might have embarrassed him. Are you kidding? I'm proud as hell. You took control of a situation that was making you miserable, and you did it with class and style. Sophie spent months trying to make you feel small, and you responded by showing everyone exactly how big you actually are. We spent the afternoon walking through Millennium Park, discussing how dramatically the evening had shifted the dynamics of my relationship with Sophie and the rest of our family. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again, confident, successful, and completely comfortable with my choices. The real test came 3 days later when Sophie called. Clara, we need to talk. Her voice was different than I'd heard it in years, smaller, less certain, without the usual undertone of superiority that had characterized our conversation since childhood. I agreed to meet her for coffee at a neutral location, curious to see how she would handle her first real defeat. She arrived 20 minutes late, looking uncharacteristically subdued in jeans and a simple sweater. Her massive engagement ring was still prominent on her left hand, but somehow it seemed less impressive in daylight, removed from the glamorous context of the gala. That was quite a performance the other night, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Performance? I was just enjoying a lovely charity event with my fiancé. You know what I mean. The ring, the timing, the way you positioned yourself as the center of attention. It was very calculated. I sipped my latte and considered how to respond. Part of me wanted to deny the calculation, to pretend that my dramatic reveal had been spontaneous, but Sophie deserved honesty, even if she'd rarely offered it to me. You're right. It was calculated. You spent months systematically undermining my confidence and my relationship, spreading gossip about my supposed inadequacies to everyone in our professional and social circles. Did you really think I would just accept that forever? Sophie's cheeks flushed, but she didn't deny the accusation. I never meant for things to go that far. I was just, surprised by your ring choice. I thought you'd want something more impressive. You thought I'd want something that would make you feel less special about your own ring. There's a difference, Sophie. We sat in uncomfortable silence for several minutes, the weight of years of sibling rivalry hanging between us like fog. Finally, Sophie spoke again, her voice quieter than before.
I saw David's credit card statements last week. The ring, the Tesla, the vacation to Paris, it's all financed. He's been living off credit and investment loans trying to maintain an image he can't actually afford. I don't think he can make the minimum payments much longer. The confession hit me like a physical blow. Not because I was shocked. I'd suspected David's financial situation wasn't as solid as Sophie pretended, but because she was finally being honest with me about something real and vulnerable. I'm sorry, Sophie. That must be frightening. The worst part is that I don't even know if I love him or if I just love the lifestyle he was providing. And now that the lifestyle is falling apart, she trailed off, staring at her massive diamond with something approaching disgust. I reached across the table and touched her hand gently. You're 28 years old. You have time to figure out what actually makes you happy, separate from what looks impressive on social media. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, but it's possible. I spent 4 months letting your opinion of my choices make me miserable, questioning decisions I'd been happy with. That was exhausting. I can't imagine how exhausting it must be to live your entire life seeking validation from strangers on the internet.
Sophie looked up at me with an expression I hadn't seen since we were children. Vulnerable, uncertain, but hopeful. I don't know how to be anything else. I've been performing this version of myself for so long that I'm not sure who I actually am underneath it. Then maybe it's time to find out. You're smart, you're creative, and despite everything that's happened between us, you're still my sister. You could build something real if you decided that's what you wanted. We talked for another hour, the longest honest conversation we'd had in years. Sophie admitted that she'd been jealous of my career success and genuine relationship with Ethan, while I acknowledged that her criticism had highlighted insecurities I'd been carrying about my own choices. Neither of us apologized outright. We weren't quite ready for that level of vulnerability, but we reached something like understanding. When we parted ways that afternoon, Sophie hugged me tightly. "That ring really is stunning," she said. "And you wearing it with Ethan's grandmother's ring, it's actually perfect. It shows exactly who you are." "Who am I?" I asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. "Someone who values both love and achievement, tradition and progress. Someone who knows her own worth and isn't afraid to show it." She paused. "I wish I could say the same about myself." 2 months later, Sophie broke up with David and moved back to Chicago. She's been staying with our parents while she figures out her next steps, and she started taking business classes at the community college. Her Instagram account has been dormant for weeks, replaced with what she calls figuring out who I am when nobody's watching. As for me, I still wear both rings every day. Ethan's grandmother's pink diamond on my left hand and my 5-carat celebration on my right. They've become conversation starters at business meetings, symbols of my personal story, and daily reminders that I can be both sentimental and ambitious, both grateful for love and proud of achievement. The Richardson project was completed successfully, leading to 3 more high-profile contracts. Mr. Green made me a senior partner, and I'm now leading the firm's expansion into sustainable luxury developments. Every success feels genuinely mine, unmarred by doubt or the need for external validation. Ethan and I were married last October in a ceremony that perfectly balanced intimate family moments with elegant celebration. Sophie was my maid of honor, and her speech about my inspiring combination of strength and grace brought tears to eyes throughout the reception. She's dating a teacher now, someone who appreciates her intelligence more than her Instagram following, and seems genuinely happy for the first time in years. The funny thing about confidence is that once you reclaim it, it becomes self-reinforcing. Every challenge I face now feels manageable because I remember the night I decided to stop letting other people define my worth. Sophie spent months trying to make me feel small, but she accidentally taught me exactly how big I actually am. And that's a lesson worth more than any diamond, no matter how many carats it contains.
Thanks for following my journey from heartbreak to vindication. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment about your own experiences with family dynamics or professional challenges. Remember to hit that subscribe button for more real stories about navigating life's complicated relationships. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just refusing to stay small when you were meant to shine. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.